let's look at what paper 3 entails, right? So you have the evidence document. You will be asked to create the evidence document. This has not changed. Um, Especially in the new syllabus, you will be asked to create your evidence document. And when creating your evidence document, it is always advisable to use steps. Okay, for example, if you're going to place a screenshot of an evidence, you have to use step 1 and then evidence. Okay, step 2 evidence, or you want to do step 1 evidence 1, step 4 evidence 2, but it has to be with step. Okay, so you need to have it has to be a step, because one of the things I noticed about learners when they are taking, or when they are creating the evidence document in paper 3, is they just write evidence 1, evidence 2. It's usually a good practice to always let your examiner know the steps in which you're taking that screenshot. So that is very, very important. Okay. Tip 2 is the fact that for website authoring, you have file management, which is chapter 11. You have image editing, which is images, which is chapter 12. This is very, very important, because in file management, what are you expected to do in file management? You're expected to create a folder. Okay, you expect to create a folder, and in that folder they tell you to locate the following files and store them in your newly created folder. So it's important for you to know how to create a folder. Okay, I pretty much know. I know that most of you know how to create a folder already, right? But you need to know how to create a folder and know how to locate those files and then store them in your folder. When we talk about locate and store, we're talking about you highlighting them and then you're cutting, you're moving them. Okay, you're not just leaving a duplicate, but you're moving those selected files into your new folder. For images, what are the things that you're expected to do? Okay, if you have questions on the images, right, it's quite simple. They ask you to use the recommended graphical software, right? Now, there are two graphical softwares I want to talk about. We have the Adobe Photoshop, and we have also the paint.net. Yes, the paint.net. Okay, so although the paint.net, we have different versions, I would recommend to you to install the latest version, because that would actually make your whole work very, very easy. People also use paint, but I don't really advise it, really, although you can use GIMP, GIMP, but the two that I always make use of is your Adobe Photoshop and of course the paint.net. Okay, so in imaging editing, what are you expected to do? Most time they tell you to reflect. We'll talk about reflect. We're talking about you flipping, right? Now you can reflect in such a way it can be horizontal. Horizontal talks about left to right. Vertical talks about top to bottom. Again, you can be asked to crop, right? Resize. Okay, this is very, very important. And most importantly, save as. Okay, save as is very, very important, and this is something you see literally in chapter 13 layout. Okay, save as. We'll talk about save as. You're simply giving a different name to that file. Okay, so when they tell you save as with a different extension, usually probably let's look at chapter 11, file management, right? So you see that we have different types of images, right? So we have the PNG, we have the JPEG, we have the GIF. Okay, even PDF. Okay, so it's important for you to know that if the extension is JPEG, and we'll talk about JPEG, it means Joint Photographic Expert Group. So it is important that if the extension is a JPEG and you are to save as to PDF or to PNG, yes, PNG usually, right? To PNG, which is Portable Network Graphics. This is very key, because when you go to your file, okay, and hit on save as, the file name should be what is stated in the paper, and then the save as type should be what is also stated in the paper. So this is really going to help you a lot. Then web page. Okay, so in web page, you have to create a web page, right? Most time the web page is created for you. Most time you have to create the web page. So please, when creating web page, this is chapter 21, website authoring. There are two recommended website authoring packages. Okay, so we have the Adobe Dreamweaver, and also we have the Microsoft Expression Web 4. Okay, it's right there in your textbook. Although there's still other text editors like your Notepad, Sublime Text, Visual Studio Code that you can actually use to actually create a web page. But right? My two favorite I always recommend to students because it makes it easy because of the simplicity in it is your Adobe Dreamweaver and the Microsoft Expression Web 4. Although I'm also aware that some other schools are also making use of the Microsoft front page, which they're just the similarities between all of them. The whole idea is the interface. Okay, why the text editor? You just writing all the codes from scratch, but with the the website often packages, it has some design view where you can actually do some little bit drag and drop, and that will make the whole process easy, and it's going to auto generate the code for you. But please take note, when we talk about the web page, it has a structure, right? Your IDOC type, which is the document type, has to be HTML. We have the HTML, we have the opening tag of the head, and what falls in the head: title, meta tags, talking about metadata, right? Your style sheet, external style sheet, and also your internal style sheet, right? We have external style sheet, which is the external CSS, and also have the internal CSS. So this is very, 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 very important that you need to take note of. Very important and key. And then we have the body. Usually in the body, you have your table. Okay, and in the structure of the table, you have your table, and usually they ask you to give a width of your table, and then you have your numbers of rows and numbers of columns. So we have TR, which is a table row, and we have TD, which is what your table data, which is a cell. Okay, so this is very, very important. Most time they might tell you to merge. Okay, so we have what we call the col span and the row span. Col span talks about column span, right? You're merging towards the column wise, and row span talks about you merging towards the row wise. So this is very, very, very important for you to actually take note of. Okay, so this is very, very important. And again, percent, right? So if each of the cells is given a specific width, please make use of that width. Okay, please make use of that width. So all you have to do is when you insert your table, and then you go to your table properties. Now you can now put your table width. Then for each of the cells, you go to your cell properties, and that would actually help you a lot. Okay, that would actually help you a lot. So this is very, very, very important. Okay, so we've talked about merging. We've talked about now another thing I want to talk about is images. Right, you might be asked to insert. Of course, usually you're going to insert images, right? So when you're inserting images, you have to take note of, because when you do it in design view, it comes with the width and height, and probably you don't really need it, right? Because at the end of the day, you want that image to fit within the cell, and if you want it to fit within the cell, then you have to be very, very careful. So usually I recommend to my students, to my learners, to always learn how to type the code. Images code is not difficult, okay? But Mr. Ajiro, right? I prefer the design view, or prefer go to the code and then insert the image. But really, the code for the images is really not it's really not difficult, because you have your angle bracket, you have IMG, and then you have the source for it. Okay, what's the source of that image you want to bring in? The URL of that source of image. You know, we have relative 5-part, and we have the absolute 5-part. This is what you see in chapter 21 of your textbook. So this is very, very important, right? So really, it talks about now you've saved everything in the same folder. You just have to just pick exact name of that file with the extension, and it's going to work. And then you have your alternative text. So if the image does not load, right? If the image does not load, what happens? So there need to be a form of alternative text that tells the viewers of your website what that particular thing is all about, what that image that you're about to view because of one network delay or the other, what that image is all about. So we have the alt, right? So we use the code alt, and then equals to, you put in the text you want to give it for that image. And then this is where it is important. We're talking about your inline style attribute. It simply means you're bringing in, right? This is what we call the inline CSS. You're bringing in styles, right? Equals to now your column, your speech marks, right? With then column, and then you put it 100%, and then you close the column. So this is very, very important, because at the end of the day, it simply means that you want that image to fit within the cell. So it falls under the TD. Now we have your TR, we have your TD, right? So this is very, very important. Okay, so this is very, very important about that. Very, very important. Okay, the next thing you need to know is video. Okay, video seems to be a little bit challenging to most learners, and I want to talk about the video. Now, when we talk about videos, Okay, so what video means simply this is, now there's so many ways to do this, but I prefer you using the code. Now the first thing you want to do with video is the opening tag of the video. So you have video and then it brings up the closing tag for you, right? And then you hit on enter, and then here you bring in the source. Now when you have the source, you have your SLC, and then you call in what? The source. Now we talked about relative and we talked about absolute file path, right? So this is very, very important. Now for the relative, you just bring in only the name and then the extension. Now, so if that video is MP4, and MP4 means moving picture what? Expert group layer 4, right? So it simply means that if it's an MP4, what happens is when you have your source and then your SLC equals to that file and the extension, now you have your type. So what's the type? The type is a video and slash what? The extension, which is what? Your MP4. And then you have your error message. Now, in the angle bracket of the video, you have to bring in your controls. The whole essence of control is they want to see a form of controls like your play, play, stop, and all that, right? Most time they tell you what if, right? They want you to just play automatically. That's an autoplay. Okay, so we need an autoplay. It plays automatically. But what if they want to play automatically from the beginning? It goes on, and that means it needs to be in a loop. Now, what happens is most videos will not play automatically until they are muted. Please take note, until they are muted. So it simply means that if until they are muted, it simply means that you have to bring in what? Muted. So you have your autoplay, right? You have your loop, and you have what? Your muted. Most time, you ask you to bring controls. So this is very important, and all this falls under the video, right? You have your video here, right? And then you have all that together. So that is very, very important. It's still the same thing if they ask you to bring in audios. Although they have not asked, as of the time of this recording, they have not asked anyone, there's no paper that talks about audio, but audio is still the same thing. Okay, because instead of video, you're not having the audio tag, and right, you're not having the source, you're not having the SLC, and then you bring in the file name and the extension, and now the type here is not going to be MP3. And you'll be like, Mr. Ajiro, what are you saying? It's not going to be MP3 because MP3 is moving picture expert group layer 3. That's what MP3 means. So it only means that the type slash what? MPEG. That's what it's going to be. Literally, that's what it's going to be, right? Literally, that's what it's going to be, right? And then you have what? Your error message, and then you close. So this is very important. So when they tell you that the video has to fit within the cell, it falls in that video section under the angle bracket, the video, and then you can add in what? Two things. Anyone, right? Anyone you can add in, either the inline style or just the HTML width. So you have the width equals to 100%, or you have the inline style, which is your styles. Okay, you have your styles equals to width column 100%. So whichever one you want to do, right? Whichever one you want to do is still going to fit it. Most time they might not ask you to put an inline style. They might give you the width and then the height. So it's still the same thing. The width is equals to this. It could be in pixels. The height is equals to this. It can also be in pixels. I think yes. And then what else? Okay, text. Putting your text, adding to paragraphs, adding to headings, still the same thing. Okay, still the same thing there. Then your external CSS. Now we will talk about the external CSS, and I'm also going to talk about your internal CSS. Now in the internal CSS, it falls under the head section. So you have your styles, and instead of attaching it, you just type in it there. So your styles, right? You have your H1, your calling bracket, you put in the properties and the values, and then you close in your styles. Okay, it's still the same thing. But for external CSS, there is no HTML. Okay, there is no HTML. So invariably, you're having to create a CSS. Okay, and then you can now add in the new styles. Take note of also class. Class begins with a dot. Okay, so class begins with what? A dot. Okay, so it's very, very important. And if you want to call it in with a class, it goes with a class. Okay, so class, okay, equals to what? Do you understand? And it brings that in. So this is very, very important. Okay, so you put it into that particular TD, right? And it's still going to work. So if you want to add a span, if it's a hyperlink, that class has to be there. Okay, that class has to be there, and then it's going to see it. Okay, so Now, in your external CSS, there are some things I also want to stress about. Some things I want to stress about, and the things I want to stress about is the internal and external grid lines. Now, knowing the structure of what it falls, knowing what falls on TD. TD means cell padding. And we'll talk about cell padding. We'll talk about the space allocated within the cells. Okay, so you have your padding top, padding left, padding right, padding bottom. So this is very, very important. And then for your table and TD, what falls in there? All right, so it falls your borders. Okay, your border width, your border styles, and probably your border color. Okay, cell spacing is stable. Border collapse is stable. The rest is stable. Okay, so that's how you differentiate it. That's how you differentiate it. The rest is stable, and that saves you the whole stress. Okay, so if you know how to properly stress, differentiate which one is TD, differentiate which one is table, differentiate which one belongs to table and TD, that will solve your problem. Literally, that would really solve your problem. So that is really, really important. And then once you're done with everything, okay, hyperlinks. Okay, let's not forget hyperlinks, right? So the whole idea of hyperlinks is to just redirect you to either your email or to another web page, okay, or to another file. Okay, so again, it makes you have your anchor tag, right? And then you have your hyperlink, your anchor tag, and then you put in the href, right? The href of whatever it is. For emails, it must have the subject line, and what your mail to, and that is that. And then you get to print. Now, when I always recommend previewing your web page with Microsoft Edge. The reason for this is the fact that one, they have where you call your web capture or your screenshot, and then you can capture the whole page, the full page, instead of just taking cutting them off, and then you're attaching them together, and that probably would not make your work to be very, very presentable. You can just take a capture of a full web page. You're going to take a capture of the full web page, and then you just have to just crop in your URL. Again, you can attach them together and then group them. Now, when you do that in your Word, it simply means that you have to click on the first one and then wrap the text to be true, do the second one, wrap the text to be true, and then you can group them together. Okay, group them together, and then, or you can make it top, right? And then you group them together, and of course, it becomes just one image. Please take note. Okay, please take note. It's very, very important. And then you have to take a copy. For your inline, for your CSS, when they tell you place a copy, still means you're taking a screenshot. When they say take a copy, still means you do what? Copy and paste. So you have to take the whole HTML code and then you paste it in your evidence document. Please do not bold the codes. Okay, unbold it and then increase the font size. Okay, this is very important. Increase the font size. So this is very, very, very important. Okay, and yeah, that would really save you a whole lot of stress. Okay, if you follow these instructions that I'm giving you. So anything I've not covered in the website authoring, please drop the message in the comment section, and I think I'll probably attend to it in the comment section. Okay, so moving to Spreadsheet, chapter 20. Moving to Spreadsheet. So the first thing to take note of is formatting. Literally, they tell you to make it look like this. But before the formatting, what's the first thing you do? You probably have to do your header and footer. What's a header? Header is an area of document that lies between the top of the page and top of the margin. The same thing with footer, that lies between the top of the page, bottom of the page, and bottom of the margin. They are both areas in the document. The whole idea is that in every page you have the same thing. It appears in the same position. So you might have to add in a header, insert a header or a footer to either put in your candidate details or your file name or just your file path. Take note that when your file path, it includes your file name. For the file path, it includes your file name. Okay, and then you save it, right, using the recommended software. The recommended software for Spreadsheet is Microsoft Excel, and this is something you see in chapter 20. This is something you see in chapter 20 of your textbook. So this is very, very important. Then formatting, right? Knowing the difference between serif, sans serif, and calibri is very, very important. Okay, it's very important. Knowing the difference between your serif and your sans serif is very, very important. Serif, sans serif, and calibri. these three fonts. Okay, because they tell you to format you look like this, they don't tell you which of the font it is. So it's important for you to know that when it comes to serif, there are little ticks. When it comes to sans serif, there are straight edges. Okay, you've done paper two already, so probably that should be no problem, because this video is more or less on paper three. Okay, formatting. So when you're done the formatting, then your lookups, right? So we have the lookup their functions. And what are functions? Functions are predefined formulas. They're just predefined to just perform just a specific task. A good example is your sum, your average, your lookup, etc., etc. Right? So